Hi, we're here today with our panel of experts to discuss the life, death, and work of Martin Luther King Jr. Today we have with us Ruth, who is a civil rights historian. We have Valentina, who is a literary specialist, to tell us more about Martin Luther King's work. And we have Chris, a forensic scientist, to dive deeper into the death of Martin Luther King. So, with no further ado, Ruth, do you want to get us started?
Sure. My name is Ruth Osorio. I'm here today to give you guys a little bit overview about the movement of civil rights and who really started the movement, and how Martin Luther King Jr. get involved into it. Well, in our history, we know about Martin Luther King Jr., but also who really started this movement was a woman named Rosa Parks, who once was a slave, and as a free woman, she continued working, doing domestic work. Therefore, one day, when she finished all her labors, she was tired. She started riding the bus, but in the bus, the only seats available was reserved for white people. But she decided to sit in those seats. But when they ordered her to remove herself from those seats, she refused to obey the order, and for that reason, she get arrested. In that moment, when Martin Luther King Jr. come to the picture, and he start doing um, the visual image for the civil rights movement, or boycott, like others call it. But for this reason, Martin Luther King Jr. Pay a very high price for the freedom of speech, freedom to vote, and freedom to ride for slaves. Martin Luther King Jr. Paid the price with his life, because this is one of the reasons he get killed. This is one of the reasons in his life, because he was one important public image for the civil rights movement, and therefore, uh, for trying to stop that movement, he get killed. In my personal opinion, I think was way too high price he paid for this movement or for the rights. Um, but thanks to his sacrifice, and thanks for what he did and the sacrifice he did, um, we are here today. We have freedom of speech, freedom to vote, and also freedom of protest. Um, but it's a lot of more history we can learn, a lot of more interested topics we can learn about this. It's very important in our history, because for so many decades we'll still continue talking about it, and and today, with as many people fighting for discrimination. But I think it's a lot of more we can learn about history, and I invite you guys to read more, search more about it. This was my little bit overview about how our history start about civil rights, and now we can hear more opinions about this topic, and we can hear from someone else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for sharing with us the origin of the civil rights movement and how Martin Luther King got involved with it. Let's hear now from Valentina, our literary specialist, about Martin Luther King's work.
Hi guys, I'm Valentina Moreno, and I'm going to explain Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech was ranked as the #1 speech of the 20th century by more than 100 scholars, even beating JFK's as Not What You Can Do for Your Country speech. The I Have a Dream speech was delivered in the March on Washington in 1963 to about 250,000 people. Black people and white people marched together in the March on Washington, with almost 60,000 of the 250,000 people being white. Martin Luther King dreamed were that people would be judged based on who they are as a person and not by their skin color, and that people would be treated equally. One of his famous quotes was, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their content of their character. I believe this is an important role because it helped the passing of the civil rights in 1964. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Last but not least, we're going to hear from our forensic scientist, Christian, about some more details of Martin Luther King's death.
All right, so at 6:01 p.m., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was found mortally wounded and struck by a bullet. Upon arriving at the hospital, he was pronounced dead. The bullet that was found in his body was a Remington Peters, a soft-pointed full metal jacket bullet that was fired at a distance by a high-velocity rifle. The trajectory of the bullet entered Dr. Martin Luther King's mouth by an inch and fractured his lower jaw and exited his jaw. It re-entered his body in the neck area and injured his spinal cord and several major arteries. The death of Dr. Martin Luther King caused many riots throughout many cities.
Thank you so much, Christian. That concludes our discussion panel for today. I hope you learned more about the life, work, and contribution to the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you for joining us.